The second hand of the mahogany clock thuds against the silence. Tick, tick, tick. It's 3:30 p.m. on a Tuesday. Sunlight aggressive, bleeding through the blinds of a stagnant apartment. Ryan sits on the edge of a bed that hasn't been made in 3 weeks. His eyes are fixed on a laptop screen, the blue light reflecting off pupils that haven't seen deep sleep in months. On the screen, a cursor blinks inside an unopened email from a top-tier law firm. "We've been following your career since the championships, Ryan. We want you." His hand hovers over the mouse. It's shaking. Not with excitement, but with a primal, bone-deep terror. He slowly closes the lid. He retreats under a weighted blanket, pulling the darkness over his head until the world disappears. To his parents, he's taking time to find the right fit. To his friends, he's working on a private venture. But in the dark, Ryan knows the truth. He isn't resting. He is decomposing. On his nightstand sits a strange, fragile object, a glass castle, a miniature, intricate sculpture of a fortress, shimmering and transparent. It looks magnificent. It also looks like it would shatter if you breathed on it too hard. Ryan was born an architect, not of buildings, but of expectations. Since he was 6, he was told he was special and natural. A gifted soul. He built his entire identity out of those compliments. He built a fortress of perfection, but there is a deadly secret to living in a glass castle. It's beautiful to look at, but it's impossible to live in. Inside a world made of glass, you cannot afford to drop a single thing. You cannot trip. You cannot fail. He reaches out from under the blanket and picks up a small, heavy stone from the floor, a simple souvenir from a life he used to have. He looks at the stone, then at the glass. Today he has 2 choices: keep pretending the castle is safe, or watch the whole world come crashing down. What happened next was the only thing Ryan didn't prepare for. Ryan opens his eyes. Sunlight cuts through the room like a blade, illuminating stale coffee cans and piles of unwashed laundry. The clock ticks toward 4 p.m. Another day dissolved into nothingness. He reaches for his phone. 42 unread notifications. "Son, did that law firm call yet?" "Ryan, drinks tonight? The whole group is asking for you." He kills the screen. Nausea rises in his throat. He doesn't hate his friends. He's terrified of them. He's terrified of that look of admiration in their eyes, the same sparkling light that used to be his oxygen, now turned into a toxic gas. He steps into the bathroom, avoiding the mirror. He knows what's there. A prodigy in a state of decay. He twists the shower handle, letting freezing water blast his head, hoping the numbness will drown out the hollow ache in his chest. Inside a glass cabinet, his best law graduate trophy sits like a piece of evidence at a crime scene. It's a reminder that he was once a winner. And in his mind, if he isn't winning, he doesn't exist. He sits at his desk and opens a draft of a job application he's edited 47 times. Every sentence must be perfect. Every comma must bleed brilliance. He types a line, then deletes it. Types, then deletes. The fear begins to choke his breath. What if I send this and they say no? What if they realize I was just lucky? What if I'm actually average? Cold sweat slicks his palms. He kicks his chair back, slamming into the bookshelf. Thick textbooks tumble to the floor. He doesn't pick them up. He watches them lie there, scattered like the pieces of his life. He would rather the world think he's resting than know he's failing. Laziness is a safer mask than inadequacy. If he doesn't try, he still has potential. If he tries and fails, he's a fraud. He looks at the glass castle on his desk. Its spires are sharp, transparent, and lonely. He touches the tip of a tower, ice cold. Suddenly, the phone vibrates. An unknown number. Ryan's heart stops. He stares at the flashing screen as if it's a ticking bomb. He doesn't pick up. He lets it vibrate until the room falls into a deafening silence. He curls into a ball on the floor next to the fallen books. A 26-year-old genius shivering because he's afraid of a phone call. But the cost of protecting his perfection is a brutal reality. He is dying inside his own fortress. The doorbell rings, sharp, clinical, ruthless. Ryan freezes on the floor, motionless like a cornered animal. He prays the person outside will just go away, but the knocking grows rhythmic and persistent. Ryan? I know you're in there. Open the door. It's not just a voice. It's a verdict. Ryan stumbles to his feet, grabbing empty coffee cans and shoving them into a trash bag, running his fingers through his matted hair. He takes a deep breath and puts on the I'm fine mask he's spent years perfecting. The door swings open. His mother stands there holding a bag of groceries and a thick folder. Her eyes sweep across the darkened room, landing on the closed laptop. You still haven't applied to Mr. Williams's firm? She sets the bag down. Her voice isn't angry, it's worse. It's heavy with expectation. They've been waiting 2 weeks. He said you were the brightest student he's ever seen. A genius like you shouldn't be wasting time here. I'm weighing other options, Mom, Ryan says, the words catching in his throat. The lie tastes like ash. Options? Ryan, this month's rent. Your father had to take it from his savings. She looks at him, eyes glistening. We aren't trying to pressure you, but the whole family believes in you. You're our pride. You aren't like the other kids. You have a gift from God. Every word, brightest, genius, gift, is a needle driven into Ryan's lungs. He feels his chest tighten. He wants to scream that he has no gift, that he's drowning. But he just nods. A hollow, robotic nod. When she leaves, the silence is terrifying. Ryan looks at the folder she left behind. A contract with a six-figure starting salary, a dream for anyone else. For Ryan, it's a steel cage. He picks up a pen. His hand shakes so violently he can't even write his own name. His mind begins to howl. "You'll ruin it. You'll get there, they'll hand you a difficult file, and you'll freeze. They'll see you're empty. You'll stain your parents' name forever." A migraine strikes. Ryan grabs the glass castle on the desk, squeezing it in his palm. The sharp glass edges bite into his skin. He needs a physical pain to drown out the shame eating his soul. Just then, a text lights up his phone from an old friend. "Hey, heard you turned down Supreme Court. You're a total beast." "Top of the mountain, man!" Ryan hurls the phone against the wall. The sound of the screen shattering is dry and final. He is no longer an architect. He is a prisoner guarding a fortress with no exit. And the worst part? He can't call for help because how can a genius admit he's terrified of walking into the light? Ryan stares at the fracture on his phone screen. It looks like a jagged black bolt of lightning splitting his life in two. He doesn't pick it up. He doesn't clean the mess. He walks into the bathroom and cranks the hot water to the limit. Steam billows, thick and suffocating, erasing his own reflection. He hates that face. The face of a promising young man whose expiration date has passed. For the next 3 days, Ryan does not leave his bed. He doesn't eat. He only drinks water from the bathroom tap. Time loses all meaning. Morning or night, sun or rain, it all melts into a thick gray slab of nothingness. He lies there, staring at the ceiling, counting the cracks in the plaster. Every crack is a mistake he imagines himself making if he ever dared to step outside. The mangled phone on the floor still vibrates occasionally, a raspy, desperate buzz like a dying insect. It could be Mr. Williams. It could be his mother. It could be the bank calling about his debt. Ryan doesn't care anymore. Shame has devoured every other emotion. It isn't the feeling of, "I did something wrong." It's the feeling of, "I am something wrong." 3 a.m. Ryan sits up, his eyes bloodshot. He looks at the glass castle on his desk. In the dark, it no longer sparkles. It looks like a skeletal cage, a sophisticated trap he has spent 20 years building around himself. He picks up the contract from Mr. Williams. He tears it. Not in a fit of rage, but slowly, meticulously, like he's performing a ritual of social suicide. The scraps of paper drift to the floor like black snow. He thinks about disappearing. Not a violent act, but a fading out. He wishes he could evaporate so that no one would have to be disappointed anymore, so the prodigy label would have no one left to stick to. He buries his face in the pillow, sobs breaking out of his hollow chest. It is the first time Ryan has cried in 10 years. He cries for the 6-year-old boy who was told he was smart. He cries for the 20-year-old who believed he would change the world. The next morning, as the first light touches the wreckage in the room, Ryan is still there, empty, exhausted, a perfect failure. The bedroom door swings open. This time, it isn't his mother. It's a stranger, an older man with silver hair holding a spare key. "You aren't dead," the man says, his voice as dry as falling leaves. "But your castle certainly is." The stranger walks closer, stepping over the glass shards of the phone screen without blinking. This is Dr. Ellison, an old family friend his parents reached out to in their absolute desperation. He doesn't look at Ryan with pity. He looks at him like a failed experiment that still holds value. "Let's go," Ellison says. Ryan doesn't ask where. He no longer has the strength to resist. He follows Ellison to a small office tucked deep inside an old building where the scent of aged books and weathered wood fills the air. Ellison doesn't tell Ryan to sit on a therapy couch. Instead, he leads him to a massive wooden desk. Two objects sit on the desk, polar opposites. On the left is a glass castle identical to the one in Ryan's apartment, magnificent, intricate, without a single flaw. On the right is a crude, sun-baked brick. It's caked in dried mud, its surface rough, uneven, and scarred. "What do you see?" Ellison asks. "I see something beautiful and something trash," Ryan replies, his voice hoarse. Ellison smiles, a smile without warmth, only insight. He picks up a tiny pebble from the desk and drops it lightly onto the glass castle. Crack! A sharp, piercing sound echoes. A long fracture runs from the spire to the base. One tiny pebble, and the perfection is gone forever. Next, Ellison picks up a small hammer and strikes the mud brick with a heavy blow. A small piece chips off the corner and dust flies, but the brick remains a solid, unyielding mass. "Your world, Ryan, is that castle?" Ellison taps the cracked glass. "Since you were a child, you were given an identity based on results. You were smart, you were gifted. That is glass. It's brilliant, but it's incredibly brittle. Every time you face a real-world challenge, a rejection, a mistake, a delay, you don't see it as a hurdle. You see it as a pebble shattering your entire being." Ryan stares at the crack. He sees himself in it. "You aren't lazy," Ellison continues, his voice low but firm. "You're just trying to protect something that can no longer be protected. You'd rather lie in the dark to keep the castle from cracking further than step outside and admit it can break. You are frozen by shame." Ellison pushes the mud brick toward Ryan. "Ordinary people build their lives out of bricks. They accept being messy. They allow themselves to be uneven. They plaster over their failures to build higher. But you're dying for a perfection that doesn't exist." Ryan touches the rough surface of the brick. For the first time in years, he doesn't fear the coarseness. He sees an exit. But how does someone used to living in crystal learn to handle mud? Ellison pulls out a blank sheet of paper and a cheap pencil. He slides them toward Ryan. Your task today is simple. Write a legal summary for any civil case. But there is one condition. Ellison pauses, his eyes locking onto Ryan's. You must write it as poorly as possible. I want to see typos, nonsensical arguments, and a conclusion with zero basis in law. Ryan stares at the paper as if it's an alien object. His entire life, every cell in his body has been programmed for the A+. Doing a bad job is harder for him than solving multivariable calculus. He picks up the pencil. His hand is stiff. As he prepares to write a grammatically incorrect sentence, a surge of fear shoots down his spine. His brain screams, "Don't! If you write this, you are stupid." If anyone sees this, your life is over. Write, Ellison urges. Ryan sets the lead to paper. The first letter is jagged. He intentionally misspells the defendant's name. He cites a legal precedent that has nothing to do with the case. Sweat begins to pour down his forehead. He feels nauseous. This isn't just an exercise, it's a war against a 20-year-old defense system. After 10 minutes, Ryan pushes the paper back. The summary looks like the work of a primary school student. Ryan is breathing hard, his heart racing as if he's just run a marathon. How do you feel? Ellison asks, glancing at the error-strewn page. I feel humiliated, Ryan whispers. I feel like a fraud. Look out there. Ellison points toward the window, where the crowds are rushing through the streets. You just did something terrible. You failed miserably on that paper, but look, the sky didn't fall. No one burst in here to strip you of your degree. The earth is still spinning. Ellison picks up the paper and tears it to shreds in front of Ryan. That feeling of humiliation isn't because of the paper. It's because you're still trying to cling to a shattered glass castle. You're afraid that if you aren't perfect, you aren't worthy of love or value. But the truth is, the value of a brick lies in its ability to take the hit, not in how pretty it looks on a shelf. Ryan looks at the scraps of paper. A strange sensation begins to kindle, not confidence, but a painful sort of relief. For the first time, he understands that he has the permission to suck. But the real experiment is only beginning. Ellison hands him a list of 5 small, no-name law firms. Go here tomorrow, not to get a job, but to get rejected. I want you to collect 5 no's in a single day. Ryan is stunned. He has spent his life avoiding rejection, and now this old man wants him to go hunting for it. Ryan stands in front of a cramped private law office, squeezed between a bakery and a laundromat. This is no place for a prodigy. In his pocket are 4 blunt rejections from this morning. One place said he was overqualified. Another looked at him with suspicion because of the 2-year gap in his resume. He walks in, sweat soaking the back of his shirt. He stammers, he trips over his words, and he gives the worst self-introduction of his life. And just as expected, the manager looks at him and shakes his head. Sorry, we're looking for someone with practical experience, not just a pretty transcript. Ryan walks out the door and takes a deep breath. This time his heart doesn't tighten. The nausea doesn't come. Instead, a strange surge of power flows through his veins. He returns to Ellison's office and tosses 5 notes of rejection onto the desk. "Done," Ryan says, his lips curving into a smile he hasn't used in years. Ellison nods, slowly picking up a shard from the broken glass castle and placing it next to the mud brick. "Do you understand now why gifted kids like you burn out at 20? Ellison asks, his voice turning somber. "Because society lied to you. They taught you to love your results, but they never taught you to love the process of molding them. They gave you a glass castle and told you to guard it at all costs. They didn't tell you that failure isn't the opposite of success. Failure is the fuel for success." He points to the mud brick. "This brick is tough because it went through the fire and it's mixed with messy earth. It doesn't fear being thrown or hit because it was never perfect to begin with. When you labeled yourself smart, you built a prison. You stopped learning because you were afraid to look stupid. You stopped trying because you feared that even with effort you might not meet the expectation." The truth explodes in Ryan's mind. A mistake isn't a stain on his identity, it's just an event. Failing an interview doesn't make him a failure. Missing a deadline doesn't make him lazy. These are just shards of glass. To truly live, Ellison says, you must have the courage to break that castle. You must accept being a crude brick, scarred, uneven, but unbreakable. Don't let your intelligence become the chains that keep you in the dark. Intelligence is a tool, not an identity. Ryan looks at his hands. They are still shaking, but not from fear. They shake because he is finally feeling the weight of reality, the raw, messy, but enduring reality of a mud brick. 6 months later, Ryan isn't on the cover of Forbes. He isn't a partner at a prestigious firm in downtown Chicago. Instead, he's sitting in a cramped office that smells like cheap toner, working for a nonprofit legal aid clinic. His salary is barely a third of that 6-figure contract he tore to pieces. But there is a profound difference. The Ryan of today doesn't stare at the ceiling at 3 p.m. He's busy. He makes mistakes. He's been reprimanded by a judge for a minor procedural error in his first week. He's blushed red when a colleague pointed out a hole in his argument. But he didn't collapse. Whenever that old, familiar shame creeps back in, Ryan looks at the only object on his new desk, a crude, sun-baked mud brick. He smiles. He tells himself, I just messed up. That sucks. But I am not a failure. I am a brick being tempered by the fire. He broke the glass castle of expectation to gain the freedom of an ordinary human being. He is no longer a prodigy. He is a builder. Every day he lays a new brick on the foundation of his life, bricks bonded by the mortar of resilience and failures claimed with pride. Intelligence is just the starting line, but the ability to stand up after every shatter is the finish line. Don't let the label of gifted become a prison that keeps you paralyzed. It's time to step out of the artificial glow of crystal and touch the mud of reality. Because in the end, a beautiful castle that you cannot live in is worthless compared to a sturdy home built from scarred, uneven bricks. Ryan chose to break his perfection in exchange for growth. What about you? Are you a glass castle, magnificent but fragile, or are you a mud brick, scarred but unbreakable? Don't suffer under the weight of gifted labels for another second. Share your story in the comments below. Maybe it's a time you gave yourself permission to fail, or an expectation you're finally ready to let go of. We aren't here to be perfect. We're here to smash the toxic expectations and start building from the truest, messiest parts of ourselves. Comment below. I am building my bricks if you're ready.